Welcome everybody to another City Clerk Study Hall. This is Mickey Shields with Iowa League of Cities. Really appreciate you joining us this morning for another session. If you have joined the previous two, these are fairly informal. This time around, we're going to focus in on financial reporting, and we have the great, wonderful, legendary Teresa Rautschafer with us. Teresa is a longtime city administrator, assistant city administrator, finance officer, a wealth of experience in city government, and is now in retirement, but is also staying very busy with us as a financial consultant for cities through the league. Great service that we're able to provide, and we really appreciate Teresa's efforts with that. And so again, we're very happy to have her. And then, so that will be the focal point today. I know a number of you also submitted questions when you registered for this particular study hall, and we'll just see how we're doing. Teresa and I were talking about this before, and she can explain more on her plan, but we will take questions throughout. I would say use that Q&A function within Zoom is going to be the best way, because that kind of builds a little log for us to use. But also, and Teresa, I know she's happy to just, if somebody wants to unmute and add your own 2 cents on any of the best practices on the different financial reporting requirements that she's going to cover. And then with those other questions that we got on just something that's not related to financial reporting, I know we got other questions from people. We'll try to get to those time permitting. So we'll try to keep this to an hour, because I know everybody's got stuff going on. So with that, Teresa, I think we're ready for you to take it over.
Thanks, Mickey. Good morning, everybody. A legend. When you say I'm a legend, that really does make me sound old. Like Mickey said, I have been around a very long time, and my career has been in local government, and I'm kind of a local government geek, and unfortunately appreciate the rules and try to follow the rules pretty closely when it comes to reporting and uniform chart of accounts and things like that we all have to do. And so I know there's a lot of you on here today, so far 60 of you. And so, I'd love to spend time with each one of you individually. Obviously, we can't necessarily do that today, but you're always welcome to call me with any question. And I am the first one to say to you, I don't know the answer to that, but I know so many people. When you've been around as long as this legend has been around, I know somebody that knows the answer. So I would be happy to do some digging and help figure stuff out for you. But the subject for today, and this is the second time I've done one of these clerk study hall things, and they're actually kind of fun. I wish we'd have started them earlier. We talked about taking one of the classes that I teach up at the Institute, Clerks Institute, the accounting class. I think working with Mickey, we might try to take that more around the state now, so that people that can't get to clerk school for a whole week or do something like that, maybe would have an opportunity to get to one of those classes and get a little more in depth into some of the things that I'm going to try to talk about today. But specifically, today's assignment was to talk about the financial reporting and some of the best practices. And what I was telling Mickey before we started was that, my best practice is my best practice, but some of you might have a better practice. And so I am not opposed, and would encourage you to make a suggestion if you can think of a way that's been easier for you to do that. Part of the issue is that a lot of us, well, we all have some sort of financial software we're using back at City Hall, and not everybody uses the same kind, okay? And that's been the major learning curve for me as a consultant for the league, is trying to learn everyone's software and how that works. And I've gotten better at GWorks. I'm not a pro at that. In my previous career at the city of Johnston and the city of Webster City, we had either Civic Systems or Encode, Tyler Encode, and a great number of Iowa cities have GWorks. I've been to a couple cities now that have Banyan, and I've talked with a few clerks. Never actually sat down at their desk, but I've talked to a few clerks that have clerk books. So I'm trying to learn all of those and see if I can help you in one way or another to get to the right answer. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter, folks, whether you're a town of 100 or a town of 100,000, every one of us have the same reports we have to do, period. And so I think sometimes when people become clerks of smaller towns, they're like, well, I'm just a small town and it's not the same. Certain things might not be the same, but guess what? You're doing the same report that I did in Johnston and the same report they're doing in Des Moines. It's just that the numbers might have more zeros in another town than they did in your town, but you're doing the same report. Okay. So the annual financial or the annual reports that you have to do that sort of start up in July. Your first one, of course, was your annual outstanding obligation report, which that was actually due August 31st. It comes from the state treasurer's office. Now, if you happen to be in a city that doesn't have any debt, you might not even know what that report is. If you have some sort of debt, you should be doing that report. I did talk to the office, the state treasurer's office, and nobody's going to jail if they didn't do one last year, but they do it this year. I was working in a city where they had debt last year, and then of course or 2 years ago and had debt last year. And I said, okay, well, they never did one 2 years ago. Is something going to happen now that I'm filing one for this year for them? And they said, no, there's no penalty. There's no fine, nothing like that. They're just trying to gather the information. So please do it. It is part of the code and it is something that is required. You're not going to get into a lot of trouble, but we all know what happens if a lot of cities don't do them. They become some sort of report that becomes some sort of penalty to it. Like if you don't do your annual financial report, you don't get tax money, or you don't get to certify your budget, or you don't get road use tax if you don't do some other report. So we don't want that to become some sort of penalty. But that report, the due date on that report actually fluctuates. Depends on what the treasurer wants, but you usually get a letter. It gives you your password at the top. It was from the state treasurer, and that would have been due August 31st. If you haven't done it, you can still do it. I'm sure you can still do it. And if you need some help, shout an email to me and I'll see what I can do for you. Then another report or letters you should be working on right now are your GASB 77 letters. And Ted Nellison, which I tried to call him right before this meeting, he has been such a help to cities in creating forms and letters and workarounds and calculations so that we don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. GASB 77 is one of those, and they're the letters you send out. Whoops, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. One of the letters you send out for tax abatement and PIF rebates. So you actually would find that on the Department of Management site, his tool and those types of things. There's really, I don't know that there's a firm date, but technically the schools really like to have that information July, August, September. By now, they would probably be asking you for it because they'll need it for their auditors. So you should have been working on your GASB 77 letters. And then the reports that are all due on December 1st, which you need to sort of takes notes, whatever, but think back on the calendars because some of them have to actually be published or posted prior to December 1st. That would be your annual financial report. Make sure you're getting those done into your paper and those types of things on time. But you have your street finance report, which I know that Mary Beth Sprouse has been doing some trainings for the road use tax street finance report. I know I think she has them recorded as well, Mickey, but I think you should have some training on that street finance report. You have your annual financial report, which we all refer to as your AFR. And your AFR, of course, is due to the Department of Management. Also, the state auditor's website has those available for people as well, finished people that are finished with them. And then on December 1st, you have to have completed your state annual urban renewal report, which that state annual urban renewal report needs to be approved by resolution by your city council. So you need to have that report done and on your council agenda for the agenda prior, the latest you should have it is on the agenda prior to December 1st. You need to have approved that by resolution, which is all part of the report. And when you actually fill out the report down at the bottom of the PDF, there's a spot where you put in the resolution number. And that one needs to be done by December 1st as well. And then, of course, there are, if you have TIF, which if there are new city clerks on the call here today, I keep saying TIF, which is tax increment financing, and that's economic development incentive you would have used to get tax money to pay for something. You would have had to have an urban renewal area. So if you have more questions about that, I'd be happy to talk about it, but it's hard to tell on here how many might have that or might not have it. Mickey, does somebody have their hand up? I can't tell how that works, or is that just me? It might just be my hand.
Sorry, I'm on mute. No, I don't, there's not a hand up, but we did get a question so far, if you want to pause there for a second.
Okay.
To talk about GASB 77. There was a question that came in from Vicky about how do we know if we need to complete GASB 77?
Okay, well, if in fact you go in and you have urban renewal areas and Ted has the tool set up so that if you go out onto the Department of Management website and you click on to, I'm going to try to go to my other screen and see if I can actually talk through that a little bit. But if you click on the site and you didn't have any action in that site, I think it comes up blank or there's nothing there. So let me check for sure. City resources. GASB 77. So if you go to that site and you went to GASB 77, and then it has a GASB 77 tool, it talks about the letter generator. It talks about an abatement letter generator. So you have TIF or tax abatement. And then it has a GASB reporting master list, GASB 77 reporting master list. It says, let's see if I can download that file.
Teresa,
Yes,
do we still have to file that if we don't have anything to report then?
I don't think
You still
so.
have to send the letters out. Somebody told me you did.
Oh, really? That just said 0? Uh, I'll ask Ted that. I didn't think you had, I didn't send them out when they were 0.
Okay, thank you.
I'll double check that. But if you go to the GASB master list, it lists all the cities, and so you would scroll down to your city. So just so like I just picked one and nothing shows up for Corning. Then if I go to Decorah, it has 1 listed. So I think for you to know whether you have any or not, you would just have to go to that GASB 77 reporting master list, and it would tell you if you have one. But I don't know who asked me that question, but that question you were asking was, you still had districts or tax abatement, but you didn't collect anything, so you had $0. Was that the question?
Yes.
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, I'll double check on that. Who would I message? I can't see who's asking me that.
Harry Smock in Worthington.
Terry in Worthington.
And also just note everybody, I included a
Nice.
link to Ted's page there on his site for Gatsby 77. So you can find that list of cities that Teresa just mentioned. There's also
Oh.
reporting tools and resources he's posted there.
Oh, thank you, Mickey.
Yeah, just to help you get started if you're a little bit confused. But like Teresa said, I would start with that. There's a little tab on that page that says Gatsby 77 reporting master list. So that's kind of your, if you're new to all this, go to that one first, just see if your city's listed. That'll help you at least understand if you're required to or not. And then the second thing I'd say is, especially if you're brand new, is talk to Teresa, talk to Ted, and just get a feel for things, and then use those tools. I don't know, Teresa, if there's a good number on how many cities are on there. It's probably half the cities in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they have every city listed, but you'd have to click on a city to see if
And see
they
if you're one
have
of
it.
right.
Yeah. Mickey, is there a way, if I get that answer for Terry's question, that you could send to this group so that everyone knows that just in case?
Yeah, we can do that in the fall.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll just make sure, Terry. That was a really good question. Thank you for asking. Okay. So then we have the state annual urban renewal report, and then as we talked about, certified TIF debt to the county by December 1st. And that again is whether you have urban renewal areas in your city or not. And another great way, if you're a new clerk and you just look at last year's budget, there's a column in the budget called special revenue TIF. If there's any activity happening in that column, you might have TIF, or you obviously have TIF. If there's nothing happening in that column, I would say you probably don't. You could check a couple years back to make sure those are all empty too. And then your safest bet is to say, yep, we don't have anything happening in TIF, and you don't worry about it for a while until you could always ask your mayor, do we have any urban renewal areas? Or if you have certain bond council. Those two reports, or the state annual urban renewal report, that has to be done and get a council resolution, as well as your certifications to the county. In my opinion, and you can ask Ted this about your particular city, I always had my council approve those because I have a lot of what is called annual appropriation, meaning I'm only counting my debt for this particular year. So each year I have to have my council approve it. You would want to double check all that with your bond council as well. Some cities don't do it that way. Some cities do. That's another best practice, or not a best practice, depending on where you're at. So another question I get a lot is, well, which report do I do first? So, you get through the annual obligation report, you've done your GASB letters if you can, or you've had them. And then it's like, do I start my AFR or do I do my street or street finance report? And it's kind of a toss-up in all honesty. The way Mary Beth has changed the street finance report, she has it laid out. And if you actually look at the report itself, which when you get your sheets and you look at it, the sheets she includes the fund numbers that should go in the column. She includes the object numbers that when you're filling out the report, that go with each particular either revenue or expense. So if you're using the uniform chart of accounts in your city, the street finance report should be fairly simple. I don't want to say really simple. It just should be fairly simple. There are always some, I don't want to say idiosyncrasies, but there are always some differences on what's going on. The page that always takes, quite honestly, takes me the longest when I would do the street finance report, and you need this information for both the street and the AFR, but you need more detail for the street report, is the bond page. So when you do your AFR, there on the page, the last page of your AFR, and I always called it page 10, the other page or other whatever, there's a summary of the debt that you have. And it isn't changing for this year. If you remember or knew, you wouldn't have known, but the state legislature did change this, but it doesn't take effect until the AFR that we do next year. So this year's AFR will be like the AFR you've done before, if you've done one before. But it has a simple little section about revenue or about debt. And it's only this big on the AFR. And it just talks about water debt, sewer debt, electric debt, period. When you're on the actual street finance report, they want to know the actual issuance. So this one makes you dig a little bit deeper. Now, if you've just finished your outstanding obligation report, that information is helpful, obviously, for your street report. So I always did this report, street report first, because it had more detail that was needed before I did my AFR. That was just mine. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to weigh in on. I'd be happy to take other ideas or other comments. Nothing? When you do the street financial report, if you've never done one before, I do suggest that you do the training with Mary Beth. I think there's still some trainings in September coming up. I would attend those, and I think some of them are actually online if that's easiest. And then again, I would start working on the street finance report before I started the AFR. So the street finance report, it used to be that you had to have a resolution to have the council approve it. Good practice. Here's my often left field comment, which if some of you have been to my trainings and up at Clerk's Institute, I kind of have a tendency to do that, and you might know that. But in my opinion, it is always best to let the council know, quite frankly, of all the work you did. Quite frankly, of all the reports you have to have completed by a certain date. But it used to be you had to have a resolution that was passed to have your street finance report approved by the city council. I honestly, it looks like I did again last year. So I think you still have to, at the bottom of the report, it does say resolution 23-306 approved at the city council meeting November 2023. So think about the fact that this report should be approved by the city council prior to December 1st as well. You don't have to publish the publish the street finance report, but you need council approval. So this one needs council approval. The state AFR one needs council approval. The annual financial report needs published before December 1st. And you have to have your proof of publication ready to scan and upload when you upload the final AFR. I always have the city council receive and file the annual AFR. They don't have to approve it, but I make sure they see it. So let's back up and review for a second. And I apologize, you guys, that I do this splitty thinking of things off and on every which way. But your annual obligation debt report was due August 31st. The city council did not have to approve that. However, I recommend that you have your city council receive and file that report. I think they need to know about it because quite honestly, it's on a public website. And when they get hit with, so your city has $43 million in debt, they don't have a clue how much money you really are in debt. They don't pay attention to that. They don't know that. Your citizens get online, see that, and corner them. They should have known what that report was going to say. Make sure they've seen that report. Make sure you're sharing the information and protecting yourself a little bit, quite honestly. Okay. Then your GASB 77 letters. The only one that's going to ask to see those is your auditor and the places you have to send them. So if you get online and you look at Ted's tools and you look at the master list and you look at the master letters, the whole system, this is a bless you, Ted. He created it so the letters are generated for us. The calculation is generated for us, except that you do have to determine by either talking to your county or looking at your software. I believe it's most appropriate to talk to your county to find out how much of a tax abatements you gave last year. I don't know how you guys know that. I've never been in a city that did tax abatements, so I honestly don't know how you know that answer. I was told in one of the cities I'm working at is that they always called the county. So I'm suggesting you call the county. Your TIF, you know how much TIF rebates you paid out. So you know that dollar amount. But tax abatement, I don't know how you know that because you never see it. You just never got it. So I think you do need to call your county. Those letters should probably get done sooner rather than later, or double checks rather than later that you still need to have those done or not done. And then the next one then I would work on is your street finance report, which has a lot of detail. Another page in the street finance report, if your city is working on a lot of projects, there's a tab that, or a sheet, the tab on the report. It's a sheet when you print it out, but about the number of projects that you may have or that you completed that year. Now, that's why I recommend the training. Mary Beth will explain that much better and more detailed than I can regarding what you want to put on that project page. What I typically have done so that I know what I put on that page is I would ask the city clerk, can you tell me in fiscal year 24, can you tell me what projects the city council accepted? So you know if you've done a street project in your town, a sidewalk project, a sewer project, when it's finally done, your council accepts that project. If you've accepted a project that involved street work or your people, that project would be in this report. So that's how I gather that information. I asked for some help from my city clerk, which is you, all right? I'm in a bigger city. I always had someone else to help me with some of that. Then there are 2 pages, well, or 3 or whatever, depending on your city, that lists all of the equipment that you use that has been paid for out of road use tax. Part of it, half of it, all of it, whatever. And you list all of those pieces of equipment. And so every year, when you pull up last year's report, the information is going to be in there and it's going to be, you'll either hit no change or sold or traded, and you would leave it, change it, modify it, add it, whatever. All of those things are on the form itself. So there's just a great deal of detail in this street finance report, road use tax report. And that's the one I think that will take you the most time. So I'd get to working on that one. So you can get that done, get it on the council agenda, get a resolution, get it passed, get it filed. When you send it in, or when you're done with it and you've sent it in to the state, it will remain in pending status until she reviews it. And until you get a email that says it's been approved, double check that every now and then. I forgot to do that one year, and she had rejected mine and sent it back to me, and I hadn't picked up on that because I had not went back in and kept looking at mine. I did, if I got an email that told me that, I missed it. So kind of watch if you submit your street finance report, watch, and if you haven't got an email within a week or two that says it's been approved and accepted, go back in and look at that. Stay on top of that and really try to make sure you get that done by December 1st. That's why I would really start with that report first. Okay. Then you're going to go to your annual financial report. And well, that's what I would do. Some people might switch and go to the urban renewal. I would go to your annual financial report. Your annual financial report, as I said, does not have to have city council approval, but it does ask that that besides you signing the report, that someone else does sign it, and your mayor might not want to sign it if the whole city council hasn't approved it. You might just want to check with them. If that's the case, you'd certainly want it to go to the council again at your November council meeting. And so even though I'm giving you December 1st as your date, if you only have one meeting in November and it's the first Tuesday of the month, you know, you only have the rest of September and October to get all these done. So that state financial report really is laid out like your budget. You're just going to have to put actual numbers in there, what you actually received in taxes, what you actually received in hotel motel tax, actually received in bond money and those types of things. And then you're going to have to do the same for expenses. When you get to expenses, it's going to ask you to do the typical 9 program areas that we have. But then when you get to the business type activities, water, sewer, electric, whatever, you kind of do have to break it out into operations, capital outlay, and debt service. And so in the budget, you know, you have water, sewer, and then there's like just 2 lines that say capital outlay or debt for all of them. In the AFR, it wants it broken down by water, by sewer, by stormwater. So you have to break it out a little bit more there. And then the one stumbling thing sometimes have on the last page of the detail of your budget, and this was a GASB ruling or GASB requirement as well, on your ending fund balance for your governmental accounts, which are general through capital projects, you have to state what that ending fund balance is made up of, whether it's the restricted, committed, assigned, unassigned, non-spendable. You have to tell, and that's why when I do that clerk school and those things, I go through those definitions all the time of what that means and why you have to do that. So I have a slide on that. I'd be happy to remind people of that. But again, then and then the last page is some other questions about, you know, what kind of vendors did you get that had amounts paid to local governments? Did you have corrections, health? I always did a separate spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and I had identified vendors as due to other government vendors. And I could do a report that just showed me those vendors I paid that year. And then I could put that amount in this report. So I don't know if you have a lot of other due to other government vendors. If you pay other cities, you pay the county to be the police protection for you. You pay another city to be your library or any of those types of services. To know that on page 10. And then there's a part question that they asked, what the total salaries and wages paid were. And it's very specific here. It says wages and salaries report here, the total salaries and wages paid to all employees of your government before deductions of Social Security, retirement, etc. Include all salary wages paid to employees of any utility owned and operated by your government, as well as salary and wages for municipal employees charged on construction projects. So they want to know the total salaries and wages you paid, not benefits. They want to know the wage amount. That's another line item on here that they'd ask you to do. I can't. So even though I'm a legend, I've been around a long time, I'm happy to admit when I make mistakes, because we're all human and we make mistakes. And when I got a new city manager, he said, I can't believe your wages are so much higher than everybody else's. Well, come to find out, I was pretty much almost double counting, because I ran a full-time report, and then I ran a part-time report, and then I ran another report, and they were already all in together in that last report. So I should have just been using the last report. So I went back and corrected that over many years. Ted let me do that. But I guess I'm just saying and throwing out to you, we all make mistakes, okay? And then there's always a way to fix it. You admit it, you fix it, right? And then down here on the last page is where I talked about the debt. And then you'll have your, it gives you, this is where you find out what your legal debt limit is. If you remember, a city's legal debt limit is 5% of their 1%, 5% of their 100% valuation. And I tell you what, I don't know how many times I could never remember where to find it, but I knew it was on my AFR, and I'd grab my AFR. I knew it was always right here, and I could pull up that number and say, okay, we're getting kind of close, folks, or we got a lot of room, or whichever conversation may be, but that's right on there for you. And then the last one, when it talks about your assets, it asks you to basically determine how much is your balance, which should equal on the other page, and where do you have those funds? Do you have them in cash? Do you have them in investments? Do you have them in retirement bonds? And it asks you to identify that. And so, geek that I am, the AFR is my funnest report. That might be why I saved it for last, because then after I've done all the horrible ones, this one is fun to get done. Anyway, I've been talking for 35 minutes, Mickey. I told you I could talk a long time. Let's talk about questions. What kind of questions do we have?
Well, there's a couple of comments going back to GASB 77. One is there was a Q&A, I think, yeah, somebody posted this in the Q&A, that on the GASB 77 frequently asked questions, that basically says you should send a letter to each of the taxing jurisdictions, even if the amount for them is zero.
Oh,
So
okay.
that is the guidance from, I'm sure that's from Ted and Department Management,
Right.
actually from GASB themselves, that they're just copying. And so I think that is the safest way to go about that one. That question
Okay.
came up before.
Is Terry still on here? So yeah, Terry's still on here. So I
Yeah.
guess Terry, yes.
There was also, I got a comment to me related to all this via the chat, where Independence has tax abatement. Basically, do you need to contact the county auditor for the amount abated? Is that the best place to go get that level of detail?
Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah. And that would be true with TIF as
Yeah.
well. Getting it, like,
Mhm.
it's not the same thing, of course, but it's adjacent to tax abatement. But that's another resource. I mean, county treasurer as well. That's part of their job, is to work with all the local governments on tax abatement, TIF revenues, you name it. So just a general guidance point there is to be in good communication with your county auditor and your county treasurer.
Right. And hopefully they're in good communication with each other. If
Yeah.
it's a county that they're not, that's always problematic for the city. Because then then you have to play the intermediary. So
Right. Yeah. Good point. Another Q&A question here. Is there someone, is there, or can someone create a cheat sheet on reports saying when they're due, where to be filed, resources available, if it needs to be published, if it needs to be approved by the council by resolution? I don't know
I can do.
of such a resource, but that's a great idea. I think we've attempted this at different times. I will say, I mean, I've been at the league now for a while, 16 years. Pretty much every single one of these reports have had changes to their deadlines and which state agency is hosting it. And so in some ways, it's a bit of a fool's errand to try to do that, but on the other hand, it's worth it. We
I
also,
could try to create one that's like effective today.
yeah, exactly. It may not be
Right.
effective next year, but it's still a great idea. The one thing I will point to is that the league puts out a calendar each year, called the city calendar. It used to be called the clerk's calendar. That does list these, the deadlines at least. It doesn't get into like the full details regarding each report's requirements when it comes to like this one needs council approval, this one doesn't, this one has to have a it has to be published, this one doesn't. But at least we'll give you the deadlines and give you a sense of like the overall look on the whole year on what is due and when it's due. And so that's available on our website, and I can drop a link into the chat here once we're done. I'll get caught up on questions. But again, that's a great idea. It's something I'll note for our staff to pursue.
I pretty much have in my elements of the financial system class that I teach, I have all these reports in there and their due dates. I could just add to that publication, the requirements, who approves, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
I can work on that, Mickey, if you want me to.
yeah, we should work on that together.
Okay, all right.
Ginger made a comment that Mary Beth Sprouse at the Iowa DOT has added an individual GL line account numbers to the report, so it makes the street finance report a lot simpler. So this was something I think a few folks have been asking for, kind of following Ted's blueprint along with the state auditor's office to sort of streamline the AFR, so that then feeds into the city annual budget form that Ted puts out through the department of management. So that was something back in the day that you still had to hand enter. But now once you get your AFR done, it takes all those past fiscal year numbers and inserts them into the annual budget. So something similar there, same thought process that at least makes things a bit more efficient when you're doing your street finance report. So that's a nice note. Thank you, Ginger. Another question here on this SFR. Does it have to be passed by resolution?
Well, that's why I kind of hesitated, because I thought someone told me no, but
I'm looking this up.
when I look at my report from last year, it certainly had a spot to put in there. And I know that my resolution was actually a resolution I wrote. It wasn't a resolution, because if you remember, the resolution used to be like the front page of
Okay.
the
The guidance we have says that this is from the DOT, and I might have to verify this, because going back to what we were saying before, some of us been doing this for a long time, and some of these things have changed by the different state agencies, and it used to have to be approved, now it doesn't, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of hard or kind of easy to forget what is required of each one. It does not need to be approved, but the DOT says it should be presented to the council at a regular meeting. So I'll verify that. So I don't think that is one that actually has to be formally approved in order for it to be completed and submitted to Mary Beth at the DOT.
Is that what you were going to say, Amy?
At the training that I went to this year with Mary Beth, she did tell us, I have written on the front of my thing that she did say it is not required by resolution.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Amy.
Obviously, a little easier than having then get your council to approve it, but I know it's still a best practice to at least present it to the council at a meeting. And that's probably true regardless of, all these different standards or requirements for these different reports. for the ones that are not required to be approved by your city council in any way, shape, or form, it's still really smart to present it within a council meeting, put it in their packet, make sure they at least acknowledge that it exists and that you've done your job. That's good for them to see. It's also what auditors like to see. So kind of build that into your regular meeting schedule, typically in the fall when you're working on all this stuff. Okay. Another one here, this is back to Ginger. When publishing our claims in the newspaper, can we publish in the same article as our minutes? I see some towns publish separately. Teresa's thinking.
Okay, Nikki.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, Ginger asked that question. What does
Yeah.
anybody else think? They were always submitted by people separately from my office, so they were always published separately, but I don't know if that's right or not. What do the rest of you do? Anybody?
Yeah, anyone
I've,
want to you go ahead.
I've seen them in the minutes in papers.
I mean, I can quickly chime in to say, I think that's how most cities do it from what I see. They just take, it kind of depends on how often your council meets. I mean, most of our cities meet once per month, but some meet twice per month. The cities that meet once per month, that's probably what you see most often, is that they just add on to the council meeting minutes a section that has the claims or the bills. The cities that meet more often, they probably choose one of the set of minutes because they don't need to do it twice in the same month. And so they just choose once, or they do it separately. So the state code, I always go back to the state code with this stuff. The state code just simply says that you have to do it monthly. And so if you, again, it doesn't say you cannot add it on to the meeting minutes or that you must, it's your choice. It just has to be done on at least a monthly basis.
In the city of Monona, we have 2 meetings and we always approve them at our first meeting and then publish them within our minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good practice to follow. That way what you're producing or what you're publishing, I should say, is sort of like, this has been approved by the council. We're very certain that these are accurate and reflect what the council has approved for payment.
Oh, these are good questions.
Yeah, keep them coming, folks. And I got a couple of also stuff from the chat here, just about some follow-ups to this, and I'm trying to figure out a way figure out how to download a couple examples people are providing, which is really cool. Thank you for doing that. See if I can share this to the group. But someone also mentioned that I don't always get the financials done if the month is not closed out in time, but most of the time it's not together. And so there's always a timing issue like that. I've heard that for years. I know you have, Teresa, as well. I'm sure plenty of the veterans on this webinar would understand where you're coming from, where sometimes there's just going to be a lag when it comes to like your council meeting schedule. A lot of cities meet on a set rigid monthly schedule, like the first Monday of the month or the second and fourth Tuesdays. There's all kinds of examples out there, and it just sometimes the timing with your financials doesn't quite work with your publishing schedule. And so you might have to be kind of looking backward when you finally do get your monthly claims report inserted for publication. It's just, you got to do your best. That's as long as you can demonstrate to an auditor or anyone in the public that you've done your job, even if there's a lag, I think you're fine. At most you might get a finding in an audit or a financial examination that says, oh, you were 2 weeks late on this or that. Well, we did our best. That's all you can do is your best.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got plenty more to go here. Can you explain section H, other financing sources, where the numbers come from for each line? Section H of the AFR, that is. I'm sure Teresa's looking up. the AFR right now.
Section H.
Other financing sources.
That's usually your bond money. Are they in revenue or where are they at, I guess?
I
Oh,
was gonna
section H.
say,
Let me look. Yeah, okay,
yeah,
section H. Gotcha. So, section H says regular. Section H says regular capital projects specify, or TIF capital projects specify. Am I missing something? But that's usually the bond money that you get. Or,
I mean, I think it's
so like,
fair to
like
say,
under H, I put in capital projects. I put in bond monies, which was 5,000 in regular or 5 million in regular and 5.9 million in TIF. Because we had $10 million in debt issued last year. FY23, excuse me, 2 years ago. So section H, that was H in expenditures. Section H in revenues talk about proceeds of capital asset sales, proceeds of long-term debt, excluding TIF, internal borrowings, and then proceeds of anticipatory warrants or short-term debt, and then they have TIF or internal loans of TIF. Is that answering the question? I feel like I'm
yeah,
not answering the question.
yeah. If somebody, whoever asked that, I'm trying to remember who asked that, it was anonymous. If you want more clarification, just post that in the Q&A as well. But I think that's always been kind of the general rule, is like, these are basically debt. Any kind of way, debt issuances that
Or
Teresa
so,
described.
or if you sell a bunch of city property,
Right, that
that's
could be it
always
as
a
well.
other
Yeah,
financing source.
right. I mean, that's less common, but that could also
Mhm.
be a number you need to report there.
Right.
So think finance. That's really what it's like. You're financing something, you're taking on some debt or issuing some debt. That's where you're bringing in revenue by doing a general obligation bond, for example. You got to account for that revenue there. Let's see. We got a comment there about doing it both ways. This is going back to that whole minutes discussion and making sure the claims are in there. So again, you see it be done both ways. So thank you for that comment, Megan. The main thing, guys, always go back to the state code. You got to do it at least monthly. How you do it, it's up to you. Another question here on Ginger, or from Ginger, going back to that section H area. Our water and sewer services we list on our column H proprietary, since we own and operate those ourselves. So that's another, for you newbies, another area of, you got to
Oh,
understand
right.
between your general fund, sort of normal stuff, quote unquote, compared to proprietary, which is some awkward terminology here, or business type activities. That's another thing you'll see in the city budget, AFR. That's really what it's meant for, is the utility services that you own and operate. That's a really important distinction. Teresa, most cities you would say own and operate water and sewer is probably the two most common utility services.
Right. And the one that gets the most messed up is garbage.
Yeah,
Because cities bill for garbage, so they think they operate it, but they have a contract with another company to pick up the garbage in town. So they're really they don't own it. They don't operate it, and it should be in the general fund under public works, not a proprietary.
that's right. Yeah. So always be very careful with that part of your budget, that part of your reporting. Because I mean, like all of this, it's not natural to know that. You just got to learn it. That's why we're doing these classes. That's why we do the budget workshops, which leads me to another question I got in the chat, which is, thanks for the reminder to get this out from, what is the date for the budget workshops? And so we just got those finalized. They're going to the, in fact, the city's September Cityscape, the E edition just got posted. And on the back page, let me double check this while I scan it real quick here. No, sorry, it's not ready yet. Oh yeah, it's toward the back, one of the last pages, we do have a save the date. And so check out Cityscape September 1. If you got the E edition, you can check that out. We'll be posting all this to our website really soon. Our focus right now to share with you, it's a little internal league stuff. Everything we're doing right now is in preparation for our annual conference, which is in 2 weeks. Right after that is when we quickly shift to all of our fall training, which includes the budget workshops. So we'll be opening up registration for that toward the end of this month. But all the dates and locations we did get finalized here recently. So just check out Cityscape, check out our website. We'll get all those out there to you. But we'll be doing 4 in November. We'll take a pause at the for Thanksgiving, and then we'll do 2 more in December. We're going to go back to our normal format. Last year, we broke them into, some of you remember, advanced and beginner sessions, 3 and 3. But that was because of all the changes that came from the legislature regarding property taxes and the property tax system. We thought it would make sense to do that. But this year, we're going to go back to our standard format where we have all the advanced and beginner folks together. And so Ted Nellison from Department Management will be joining us as usual. I know Teresa will have you come out and help teach those classes, myself included. So again, just keep your eye on League Weekly, our website, Cityscape, and we'll have all the details in that for this year's budget workshops. Thanks for the question on that.
How
Okay.
many, can I ask a question before we sign off? We've got 2 minutes left. How many of you think it would be of interest to, we used to, back in Cindy Kendall and I did it, we used to call it on the road accounting. I don't know what it would be called, but how many of you would be interested in like a 4-hour, 4 o'clock to 7 or 8 o'clock class at night, just to talk about some accounting and governmental accounting, fund accounting, refresher for stuff like that? We've met with the state auditors and they just think, well, I guess we're getting a lot of hands there, Mickey.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've met with the state auditor, or Mickey met with the state auditor, and really some of the big challenges for you guys out there is, first of all, you're all alone. You're doing everything. You can't balance your checkbook while handling billing for the utilities, paying payroll, just kind of overwhelmed. And if you have any sort of hiccup about what's going on, things just pile up. So just sort of wondered how it would be received, I guess. So appreciate the feedback.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, Teresa, because that's definitely a goal of ours. We did meet with the state auditor's office, myself, Alan Kemp, and Barb Barrick, along with one of her council members from Huxley. I think it's something that we're kind of seeing, I don't know, renewed interest or pressing needs to help some cities out there. There's been a lot of turnover, probably the most turnover I've seen in my 16 years here at the league, in the clerk position, finance officer position, as well as city administrator and city manager. So it's just one of those things that kind of comes and goes, but I think we're seeing a time where we really need to offer more training. So we'll work on that. We would really like the state auditor's office to help with those as well. Like have one of their staff who does city audits come out and at least teach portions of the class in conjunction with us. I think that would help them as well as us. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely something we want to do.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, we have just I want to get to couple more. Is that okay, Teresa? You got a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's
absolutely.
do this. I hate to leave people hanging. New clerk, no idea where to even start. There's a lot of that, but they want to see receipts from an amendment that was done a year ago. She's wanting to know what
They
the
want to see what?
seat receipts from an amendment. I'm not sure that's quite following there, but I would quickly my first reaction is, any receipts like invoices, documentation, those are going to be public records. And so you're going to need to provide that anytime a resident or anyone from the public asks to see receipts, invoices, documentation related to expenses in general. Those are all public records. You're going to have to provide them when requested. So if that's the nature of the question, I would just try to find whatever documentation, whether it's old receipts or invoices, that's, just those are all public records. Other than our cash report, like the revenue expense reports, what other financial reports do you suggest to share with the city council?
Oh, great question. I usually do share with them the revenue and expense report for the end of the month. So they know, where it was budgeted and where you're at currently. And then, usually I get the bank reconciliation and a treasurer's report, revenue and expense report, budget to actual, treasurer's report, and a bank reconciliation. An investment report if you have a lot of investments.
Good idea. We're gonna quote just one more here, and then I've got one more in the budget workshop, then we'll wrap it up. Our city received SRF fundings / loan reimbursement. When I completed the outstanding obligation report, should I have completed the total amount approved, like $570,000, or only an amount that was reimbursed to the city as of the end of the last fiscal year, which was $135,000?
Yeah, I would have just done what I received so far this year. That's technically the only debt you owe at this point. You haven't got all the rest of that money, so just the annual amount is fine.
Right. It's an annual financial report. That's one of the kind of tricks to it.
Next year that amount will change, and it's okay to change the original amount, but as of today, you don't owe that whole amount.
Entire amount. That's right. All right, one more, I swear. If a budget amendment is done and you can't find receipts or documents, your county auditor should have the original amendment certificate that would have been turned. Okay, that's more of a comment from Ginger. I think it's going back to that question before, like an amendment there.
You can look up any of your own budget amendments or amendments that were filed right on the Department of Management site. All of your budget amendments that were certified should be on there. Now, what I ran into in one of my cities was that the county had not approved it. So although the city had passed the budget amendment, had filed it with the state, sent their copy to the county, when she went in to do her second amendment to the state, it didn't pull up the first one, and that's because the county hadn't done their part, and she had to call the county to get them to do their thing. So hopefully that's not the case of whatever's going on there, but
yeah. All right, to wrap up here, we got a comment from Bev that kind of goes with fall training. And so we talked about the budget workshops. I got another question on the budget workshops I'll address real quick, and then we'll get to Barb's point or Bev's point. The question was, if we enroll for one of the in-person classes, do we also get access to the virtual one? Yes, we will make sure that you get equal access. So sign up for the in-person workshops. I think they're always really valuable. But you can also then join the virtual session as well. And so we'll have that information out there soon. And then to Bev's point here about IMFOA. So IMFOA hosts a fall conference in October here in Des Moines. That's a great opportunity, especially if you're newer, to get training on stuff that's devoted toward or designed for city clerks and finance officers. Always a wonderful conference. There's a fall and a spring, so that's always a very well attended. So make sure you plan for that. There are also classes that Iowa State Extension hosts with their Municipal Professionals Institute in October. Those are virtual classes. I'm trying to remember, I think those are in earlier October, if memory serves. And so just keep an eye out. The league's part of our job is to help promote all these different opportunities for city officials. So if you haven't signed up for League Weekly, that's our weekly e-newsletter where we include information on training opportunities and all sorts of other things as well. So just Stay engaged, ask your colleagues on this webinar and the city clerks around your area, ask questions of myself, Teresa, Bill Goldie. We're all here to help you out. Don't be strangers. And so with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank the legend, Teresa, Hall of Fame member. Somehow I forgot to mention you're a Hall of Fame member of the Iowa League of Cities. So one of the all-time greats. Trying to embarrass.
Oh my, yeah, it's working, it's working.
I've known Teresa since I was a little kid, and that's
Yeah,
really
that really shows you how
that-
old I am, you guys.
Me too, though. Me too. But always
Mm.
appreciate everything you provide, and you're just a great resource for all of us. So with that, this was recorded today. We will get this out, turned around, and sent to everybody that's registered, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Holler if you need anything. Bye.